open now to any questions to the public, from the public. Is that Mr. Cradaville?
Yes, that's me. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes, I do hear you.
Thank you for opening up to questions, Madam Chair, and thank you and Commissioner Walde and Commissioner Dunlap for the really good questions that you asked. I share concern about zero affordable housing. I just want to make sure I heard it right. None of the rental units will be affordable. None of the for sale units will be deed restricted affordable. And what is the total number of units for this project? It's several hundred, right?
Yeah, 700, just over 700.
Okay. I think that a project of this magnitude simply must include a affordable housing component. We heard some examples of other projects thrown around. I for one, not a big fan of the projects that were mentioned, but certainly not a big fan of hearing $1,600 or $1,700 for renting a studio apartment. I mean, these are prices that I don't think I could afford. I don't know if the commissioners could afford them, but certainly, most New Brunswick residents cannot afford those rates, and so I'm very concerned that this is a project that will not provide housing for those who need it most, those who are already here in our city. I also wanted to ask if there's any accommodations for public transportation. I think that building 700 units is going to add a lot of automobiles unless you plan to make public transit easy and viable for the residents. Is there any so much as some bus shelters or any type of amenities for transit?
Yes, that's a great question. We actually do have shuttle service that's proposed from the center of the project to various points of interest within the downtown. That was something that the city was also felt was very important from a planning point of view, and we would expect on we have other projects similar in size to this where, depending on resident demand, we could end up with as many as 150 or 200 residents during the afternoon and morning peaks that are commuting via mass transit. So having that shuttle link to the Northeast Border Line and the downtown or other points of interest throughout Rutgers, we recognize is likely to be substantially in demand here. With respect to your comment on affordable housing, I respect what you're saying. I will say to you that there are many examples of projects like this in similar communities that did not have on-site affordable housing and are providing a payment in lieu. The project that we mentioned in Hackensack is a good example. The project that's being built in East Brunswick around the corner is another example. That project is approved for over 1,200 units, and there's no on-site affordable housing. And it's not because those communities don't care about affordable housing. They do. They made the planning decision that you could create more affordable housing by collecting money, using the money from your affordable housing trust fund in order to rehab units or to sponsor 100% affordable housing projects, which are eligible for things like, HMFA tax credits and low-income financing that we're not eligible for as a market rate project or even an inclusionary development, and leveraging those dollars in order to create more housing, within the community. So all I can say to you is our plan complies to the redevelopment plan standards. Affordable housing on site is not a plan standard, a payment in lieu is. And, we're committed to making sure that, our project is built and that the revenue that's generated from it, whether it's the affordable housing fees or it's the pilot revenue, can be used by the city to create, hopefully workforce housing in the community.
Thank you for the thorough answer, and I'd be remiss if I didn't thank you for the thorough presentation as well. I do appreciate it. I want to clarify on the payment in lieu you're speaking of. Is this would be an additional payment, or are you talking about the payment in lieu of taxes for the long-term tax exemption that you've applied for?
So there, that's a good question. I also didn't explain that well. There's a payment in lieu for which is for real estate taxes, which at full completion of the project is projected to generate about $2 million a year in revenue for the city. And then there's an additional payment in lieu of building affordable housing, which is a citywide requirement. You know, Kate can speak to this better than me, but I believe it's 1.5% of equalized assessed value for residential and a slightly higher percentage for the retail components of the project.
Right, so just to build off of what Mr. Russo said, the city has an ordinance and the state actually has a statute that deals with this, and it is 1.5% of the value of the residential units and 2.5% for the non-residential. And that's a payment that, again, the redevelopment plan requires that the developer make to the city, and that is separate and apart from the payment in lieu of real estate taxes. So that the payment in lieu that Mr. Russo was referring to in the context of affordable housing is a separate payment that the redeveloper makes that will go into the city's affordable housing trust fund. And it's earmarked for the city's affordable housing initiatives, whether that be rehabilitation of existing affordable units to improve their condition, or whether it's to create new affordable units elsewhere within the city, either as part of a 100% affordable project or as another initiative. And then the other payment that we're talking about is a payment in lieu of standard real estate taxes. And that would go into the general city fund separate from the affordable housing fund. So there's two payments coming out of the project: one, payment in lieu of taxes, and two, payment in lieu of affordable housing. And again, as Mr. Russo indicated, the payment in lieu of affordable housing is dictated by the redevelopment plan, which the city's planners and council and planning board have all reviewed as being the appropriate planning for this property and this redevelopment initiative. And as Ed also indicated, the city does take affordable housing very seriously, as I'm sure you all appreciate. And part of it is strategic on their part to determine where the most affordable housing can be created, kind of getting the most bang for their buck, so to speak, and where it's most needed. So those are the two different payments that we're talking about. Hopefully that
Okay.
helps.
Thanks.
Okay, thank
Thanks for
you.
elaborating.
All right, thank you.
So that payment in lieu of affordable housing, that's a one-time payment?
Correct.
One
And
time,
do you have an approximate figure of how much it would be?
Okay, this will
I-
be the last question, and then we have to move on. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Russo.
I can try to answer that briefly. It's up to the tax assessor to determine what the equalized assessed value of the project would be. And it's generally done at the time that construction permits are issued for the project, because 50% of the fee is due at the beginning of construction, or when permits are issued, and then their balance of the fee is due when the first certificate of occupancy is issued. So we could research with the tax assessor what the likely assessment would be, so we could calculate the fee. But on a project this size, it's in the millions.
Okay,
Thank you. And Madam Chair, if I could just close with a comment, I do want to give you my thoughts on the project. So I very much appreciate the presentation and the questions that you allowed me to ask, the questions that you asked. At the end of the day, there's already a motion and a second on the floor, but I do want to advise you all that the redevelopment plan is currently being changed. The long-term tax exemption application that was mentioned was on the council agenda recently, but was pulled at the last minute. And so that has not been done yet. As mentioned by the applicant, the TAC and the full planning board have meetings coming up to review this. And so in light of all that, I would encourage you to approach this like you've done other projects, where you end up doing the redevelopment agreement at the same time as you do the designated redeveloper. I think the devil's in the details with projects like this, and it sounds like some of you have some concerns about the affordable housing. Whoever made that motion to adopt this could consider, withdrawing that motion and just tabling the matter, so that we could get more answers, perhaps push for more affordable housing, and ultimately let these other processes play out. So I did want to encourage you to for the moment, table this item. And thank you for the time.
okay, thank you, Mr. Cradavell. Okay, all right. There are some other individuals on here. John,
Yeah, there's no hands up, Chair. In fact,
Okay.
Charlie, I don't know how to, can you put your, do you have another question, Charlie, or is your hand?
no, it
Okay.
remains.
I'll put it down.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other hands, Chair.
Okay, all right. Okay, so there was a motion and then there was a second. Okay. All right, so we can move on forward, put this to a vote.
You're going to call for the vote, Chair?
Are there any other concerns from the commissioners? From who put the motion?
I believe Commissioner Walde made the motion, and I didn't know whether it was Commissioner Dunlap or
And
Commissioner
who did the
Wright.
second?
It was Commissioner Dunlap or Commissioner Wright, I believe. So I'll give it to Commissioner Dunlap. How about that?
Commissioner Dunlap? Okay,
I think
All
it was simultaneous. So
Okay.
Chair, do you have, are you calling for any abstentions at this time?
that's what I'm calling. Yeah, I'm calling for any
Right.
abstentions.
Yes, so I abstain.
And that's Commissioner Wright, right?
Right.
Commissioner Wright.
So you're gonna have, okay. You ready for the vote?
Yes.
Okay, Commissioner Walde,
Yes.
Commissioner Dunlap. You're on mute, Commissioner Dunlap.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can, sir. Sorry.
Yeah. I abstain.
You're gonna abstain too. Okay. And Chair,
I'm gonna abstain.
okay. All right. I thank you all. I guess we'll be seeing you again at some point.